Sian Berry is the Green Party's mayoral candidate for London this May. She ran for mayor in 2008 and took the Greens from 8th place to 4th. This time round, her policies on housing and pollution are far more radical than those of Sadiq Khan or Zach Goldsmith. But post-Corbyn, is anyone listening to the Greens? I started by asking Sian what her expectations were for this election.
Well, who knows at this point? I mean, I think people are just starting to realise that this election is happening. People want to see radical policies, ones that are very hopeful about solving the real problems that we have with real thought out solutions, things that are actually going to change the system for good.
If Jeremy Corbyn wasn't Labour leader, and if Tessa Jow, let's say, somebody even more boring than Sadiq Khan was running as the Labour candidate, you would have had a real shot at this, wouldn't you? Because all of a sudden you've got the Green surge has happened, the SNP have arrived on the scene, huge breakthrough. A lot of those energies in England and Wales, maybe less so in Scotland, are now diverting back to Labour, aren't they, with Jeremy Corbyn? Whereas you could have done very well if he wasn't the Labour leader.
Well, that's like a doubly hypothetical question, because the fact that Jeremy Corbyn did win is part of the reason why. It's part of the sequence of outsiders winning that leads me to think that we could win. I've said the other day that I think we're all part of the same movement of people. I'm actually not tribal about the fact that a lot of people have joined the Labour Party who I think should have joined the Green Party. I'm not going to hold that against them because they're interested in activism, they're interested in pushing progressive policies through, they want to get out on the streets. And actually, if they're going to get out on the streets for Labour, that doesn't bother me as much.
I understand your point that Corbyn being Labour leader means that the politics you generally advance, the ones that you want to see put into policy, that's more likely now with him as leader of the Labour Party. But for the Green Party, surely, be honest, at the organisational level, it's an existential threat, isn't it?
Well, no, we're not losing members to Labour as much as you might think, actually. We've still got, I think, 19 out of 20 of the people who joined us during the Green surge. Very few are resigning from us and going to Labour. And look at the candidate they have. Look at Sadiq Khan. I mean, to what extent is he going to fulfil the expectations of the people who joined Labour for the Corbyn surge? And people have 2 votes in this election, so why would I worry?
You're a classic, I would say, green-red candidate. You champion big green issues that your membership really cares about, has for a long time. Clean air is one. But you're also clearly a big campaigner around social justice, high rent, low wages. When you take these policies to people on the doorstep, the green issues, the red issues, what gets them more energised? Do they really care about the green issues so much?
Green issues are a real issue. This is London. Of all the places in the UK, London is the place where air pollution is a really big issue on the doorstep. In Camden, 2 years ago, I did a study where we put little tubes up on the lamppost, left them there for a month, proper scientific experiment to show, to find out the air pollution and show how bad it was in Highgate. Everywhere in my ward, you've got air pollution at levels that's illegal, that's above the legal limits, and particularly you could see exactly that it was associated with traffic. That affects children's lives forever once their lungs grow up stunted in terms of their growth. People want that sorted out, and they know that we're the ones they can trust to do it.
You've proposed a London Renters Union, fantastic logo just behind you there. That would cover 2.3 million Londoners, 1 million households. How exactly would it work? And would City Hall be paying for an organisation that would allow rent strikes, for instance?
Well, that's the key things there. So we are proposing to pay for the core costs and the office costs for an independent organisation. We think they could be very useful in organising in all kinds of ways. And when you say rent strikes, I mean, we have a bit of an issue here in that we don't have a lot of institutional landlords. And rent strikes are a tactic that you can only really use when there's a body that you're striking against. So students, the UCL students, are putting forward a rent strike at the moment. It's been an effective thing that students have done for a long time because they've got one landlord. I think they can be a very strong voice though in getting the powers that London needs to control rents.
How's that a union?
That's something.
Why is it a union? I might as well just call it sort of London Renters Lobbying Association.
Yeah. So the other things that unions might do, and the other things that unions do very effectively, is provide information on rights that you already have, organise to enforce the rights and legal requirements that there already are. Some of the renters groups have been doing really good secret shopping exercises on letting agents who are supposed to show their fees in full, in advance. The other aspect of a union, and I've been in a union and benefited from this myself, is part of the dues that you pay are more or less an insurance type thing where you guarantee yourself free legal representation when you need it.
Would you like to see more devolution in London? Would you like to see a future mayor, a future London Assembly have control over energy policy, welfare? How far would it go?
I mean, I'd like to see more or less full devolution for London. I mean, there's certain things that are best done at a national level, things like defence, foreign policy as well, obviously. But most domestic things, I think, should be devolved to the regions, to the cities, to the boroughs from the city level as well. We've got to remember we need a campaigning mayor in London because we're going to end up next year and the year after with new mayors, with new devolved powers in other cities as well. And I think it's really important that those mayors work together across the country and work on the government to get more devolution sorted out.
So the Greens have famously been referred to as a very white party. London has had massive issues around policing, particularly around people from minority backgrounds. As a mayoral candidate, as a potential mayor, as a mayor, how would you solve these problems? First of all, does the Metropolitan Police Service have big problems around racism? And what can the mayor do to overcome them?
And the Met does have a serious problem still. I mean, it doesn't represent Londoners. The recruitment drives there have been to make London's police more representative, have not been that successful. We need more women in the police, for one thing. We're nowhere near 50% women in the Met, and we need to be. And we need to be truly representative of all the different communities in London. I also think, I mean, the Greens have got an excellent record on the police and civil liberties, on policing procedures, on fighting campaigns where there have been injustices and deaths in custody. We're a huge friend as elected Greens of a lot of issues that people of colour have with the police, and will continue to do that. But it needs fundamental reform. We need to be looking at police priorities like from the ground up.
Would you get rid of stop and search?
I think it needs fundamental reform. There are some occasions where you got an incident and you might want to make sure that you're stopping and searching people in a particular area as a means of detection. But it's not used like that at the moment. It's used as a means of, I think, harassment.
Uber. It seems almost every other week that cabbies are driving through London, shutting things down. I couldn't be more in support of what they're doing. But is there a problem in the long term for black cab drivers in so much as if the future is self-driving cars? We've got the CEO of Uber, Travis Kalanick, going on record as saying that Uber will help ease the transition for city authorities as they deal with the introduction of self-driving cars. Is that the case with Uber? And black cab drivers in the long term, they're history, right?
No, I don't think so. I think, we've got 200 years of black cabs in the city, starting with horse-drawn versions. There's a lot of very strong regulation. They're a very safe service. People feel very confident in using black cabs as an alternative to public transport. Where I think they've lost out and where Uber has been very successful is in automating that, in making that work with apps. And I think the sharing app, the Uber Pool that they've launched now, has real potential. If Uber is helping people to share journeys they're making anyway and reducing traffic on the streets, that's a very, very good thing. On the other hand, I do worry that they're going to be taking people off public transport, and even a full car is not an efficient way of travelling in comparison to a bus or a tube. That's partly why I want to cut the fares. I want people to get a real signal that travelling by tube and bus is a much cheaper way of getting there. Simplifying the fares as well is another way of doing it, because then you're competing with the simplicity of ordering an Uber.
Final question. I think Sadiq Khan's probably presuming that he can bank on your endorsement, that a lot of Greens, a lot of people voting for you as their first preference will vote for him as their second preference. Is that a fair assessment? Or are there some things he could do which would mean you simply would not give him your endorsement?
For the time being, I'm trying to beat Sadiq Khan, and I wish people would vote for me instead of him. At the moment, I am thinking it's quite likely we might not recommend anybody at all. I would feel like a hypocrite if I was to say, vote for somebody who was going to go ahead with Heathrow or Gatwick expansion. I couldn't, as a long-time transport campaigner, recommend anybody votes for somebody who wants to build new roads in London, particularly not new road crossings over the Thames. And the two candidates from Labour and the Conservatives at the moment are keeping very, very quiet over that. And Sadiq Khan in particular has been goading Zach Goldsmith over Gatwick. And that's not helpful. We need to make our climate commitments. We need to be reducing air pollution. We can't just say people around Gatwick, people in Crawley, you can have illegal levels of air pollution because you can't vote for me. A candidate who's not going to shift on any of those issues would struggle to find me recommending them.